Good evening, my friends. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight, even in this virtual concert hall, as it were. My name is Eric Stark, and I'm the artistic director of the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir. And on behalf of the singers, the board, the staff, the volunteer, it's an honor to welcome you to tonight's Inquiring Minds. This is a event that is meant to help us all understand about the upcoming virtual Sacred Masterworks concert, which will be released in just over a week, June 3rd. And we'll give you a little bit more information about how you can view that from the comfort of your own home and device in just a moment. And we look forward to sharing a lot of information about the concert with you this evening in the next minutes. But before we launch into that, it's fitting to take a moment today, May the 25th, which is the one-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd, to remember that we live in a culture that too often falls short of its aspirations and its goals. We at the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir affirm that Black lives indeed matter, and we also affirm our aspiration to be an anti-racist organization and a force for good in our community. As a chorus, we know that we can achieve the greatest beauty and artistic meaning when the contributions of every individual are valued equally. And we believe choral music can not only help us heal, but also lead. So tonight, we are going to be joined by a number of wonderful guests who will talk with me and share their thoughts about the music that will be included on the June 3rd broadcast. But one of our guests is a very special friend, and we're very eager to have you know him. Oops, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. My apologies. I want to make sure that I do everything in order so that we don't miss anything. When it's time for the virtual Sacred Masterworks concert to be broadcast, starting on June the 3rd, there is an access code which is available to you if you go to the choir's website, indychoir.org, and you'll see a prompt for the Sacred Masterworks program. Click that and it will take you to a screen where you can purchase a virtual ticket to have access to the program. The program will be available for 3 months, and you'll be able to watch it as many times as you like. So that's making a little bit of lemonade in the time of the waning days of the pandemic. Normally, we just are able to do a performance one time, but you could see it every day, every hour for 90 days if you would like. I'd also like to invite any of you who are watching this evening to interact with us. You can put comments or questions in the chat window alongside of your viewer, and Kelly Kierce, our development director, will be moderating that and putting those, sending those questions to our panelists as we speak. Now, we may hold some of them until the end of the program, or we may take them along the way, but we definitely are interested in knowing what you're thinking and the questions that you may have for us. So please do let us know. Longtime fans of the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir are well acquainted already with sacred masterworks. These are pieces like Handel's Messiah, the Beethoven Ninth Symphony, Haydn's Creation, the Berlioz Requiem, works that we've performed over the years that thrill us and inspire us with their majesty and their beauty and grandeur. This year, our Sacred Masterworks concert comes to you virtually, hence the title, Virtual Sacred Masterworks. And rather than try to feature one major work for chorus and orchestra, since we simply have not been able to gather all members of the choir together safely, we decided we would create small groups from within the symphonic choir, octets, groups of 10, and each of them would sing a piece or two that would be recorded then live and in person and shared with you via the streaming opportunity that begins in just over a week. And so that's why we're calling this the Virtual Sacred Masterworks. And the concert will include works that are by composers whom we know already very well, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Gabriel Fauré, Johannes Brahms, and then other composers who are equally deserving, but perhaps less well known to us, Nathaniel Dett, Ysayu Barnwell, and David Baker. And so we're going to be exploring a little bit of that tonight in our Inquiring Minds event, and we're so happy to have you with us. Okay, I mentioned that we were going to have several guests with us, and soon we're going to be joined here on, I'm going to be joined on screen by a very special guest. Joshua Thompson is a friend of musicians in Indianapolis and Indiana and beyond, and has been for many years. Although he is a Indianapolis native, a graduate of North Central High School and DePauw University, where he studied piano performance as well as sociology. Joshua has become quite prominent in performing arts circles as people are reaching out to find new information about composers that we already know and about composers that we might not know so well. And so we're honored, we're super happy, and we're very, very honored that Joshua is going to be joining us on the program tonight. And before we welcome him on screen, we have just a short little video that he has prepared that will help introduce him to you. So let's take it away.
My name is Joshua Thompson, and I'm a classical pianist who specializes in programming and performing the classical masterworks written by people of African descent. I was born and raised here in Indianapolis. I'm a North Central graduate of the class of 2000. Began taking piano lessons from a next door neighbor when I was 5, and then at the age of 10, picked up the study of classical trumpet. I guess my process was learning how to play in school, but also with other organizations such as the New World Youth Symphony Orchestra, which really opened up the entire canon of orchestral music to me. Participating with the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra side-by-side program, and both of those and that combination really helped prepare me for what I thought was going to be a 4-year run at DePauw University with their School of Music, but life happens. And I ended up getting my bachelor's in sociology, but continued to play piano and trumpet privately. I have always done this work as far as the practice since I was 5, and for anyone who does this type of work or this type of skill, it's long hours, it's lots of auditions that you don't get, and so I felt like when I was in the School of Music at DePaul, I'd already done that, and I wanted to explore other parts of my own identity and my own life, and so sociology became a way for me to find that vocabulary to articulate how I view the world. I guess the end game and the goal for me with the work that I'm doing is to work myself out of a job maybe when it comes to emphatically advocating for the programming of these masterworks written by people of African descent. I'll know when that's happening when everywhere from the ISO to the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra to the Indianapolis Opera to other local artists and international artists, when you look at the playbills, and people who look like me are everywhere, and not just in the month of February. When students are giving recitals from K through 12 and undergrad and beyond, when these works are programmed on the recitals, and it just becomes a regular thing that we don't have to overstate. We are not even close to that point yet. I look at it as job security for me for the meantime, which I guess is fine and it's nice, but that's how I'll know that what I'm doing has been successful. And it's not even for me personally. It's a work that's bigger than myself. We're not doing the genre of classical music any favors by intentionally and unintentionally remaining exclusionary when who and what we choose to highlight when we have representation for the genre.
Fellow Hoosier musician, scholar, sociologist, welcome, Joshua Thompson. Wonderful to have you with us tonight.
Oh man, I am so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this for weeks and months. So it's a pleasure, and everyone out there, hello, and thanks for having me.
Well, it's our honor to have you be here, and we thank you very much for that. Before we get into this, you and I were chatting just a little before the broadcast tonight. Would you like to tell our viewers a little about that beautiful piece of music that you were playing in the video? Just spectacular.
Absolutely. That's a piece called Out of the Silence. It was written by William Grant Still, and it is the fourth movement out of 7 from a larger piano suite called 7 Traceries. And so for William Grant Still, a tracery was a face of God. And so with there being 7 of them, these are very deliberate faces, and that out of the silence in that fourth movement is our creator as this grand, omnipresent being. And for those who take biblical ascription of ashes to ashes and dust to dust, or if we do sciencey Big Bang theories, it's all the same. None of us are getting out of this life alive, and we all come from nothing, and we're all going to go back that same way. So it's a very meta and cosmic piece, and it's stunning. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's one of my favorites.
It was wonderful to hear. Thank you so much for letting us peek into that a little bit. Okay, so my first question for you, not so much about the music of the Virtual Sacred Masterworks, but a little more about your work in our community. You've been doing a lot of work with folks and friends that we've known for a long time and worked with, opera star Angela Brown, classical music indie, the podcast that you and Angela have together, Melanated Moments in Classical Music. Yes, show the t-shirt, I'd hoped you would. As well as the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. Is there anything, in your opinion, that is special about our community and the performing arts, Indianapolis and music, things that make our city stand out?
Absolutely. I am clearly biased because I'm from here. I'm a local yokel, as I like to say. But I can just always remember from a young child going to the ICO, the ISO, and some of these other, ballet companies, and being exposed to that at such a young age. I'm talking 3, 4, 5 years old, and that kind of started the spark for me. And then being a graduate of North Central that just had such a prolific and still does performing arts program. It's this is an incredible city, and I think what a lot of people may forget because we live here, and sometimes we can be a little bit numb to the gyms that are in our own city, is the diversity and genre and artistic expression and creation, along with the level of elite musicianship and artistry, is it rivals some of these big cosmopolitan cities, and I think sometimes we forget that. And what I love about being here is it can still be competitive in a healthy and constructive way. But the ways in which, from audience members to artists to administrators to teachers, we have so many accessible touch points, strategies and methods in which to talk to each other, with each other, across the aisle with each other as well. And I'm not sure you get that in so many other places. And so the doors are not necessarily so heavy here if they're not open, because we're a lot more connected within degrees of separation. And this is a city where if you stay on your grind and do your work and are disciplined and keep your nose clean, it pays off. It may look different than what you think. I was supposed to be a trumpet player and now I'm a pianist. But the resources here are just, they're a lot more numerous than we think. And I really enjoy helping, and my other community members pulling that curtain back and showing folks the process, and the artistry that goes behind it, because that's what keeps this thing that we all love so much perpetuating from generation to generation. So that's it for me, I think.
Well, you're obviously an important part of that conversation and that dialogue between that goes back and forth kind of through the doors, as you were mentioning. And we thank you for your serving our community in that way, as well as being with us tonight. So let's turn our attention now to the first piece on the Virtual Sacred Masterworks concert that folks will be hearing starting on June the 3rd. It's a work called Invocation by the composer Rollo Dilworth.
Yeah.
Rollo is a wonderful composer and choral scholar and teacher on the faculty at Temple University. He and I have been friends for a long, long time. And so it's an honor for us to get to perform his music. As I mentioned, the title of the work is Invocation, kind of a telling title there in and of itself. I wondered, Joshua, if you can tell us a few of the things that you might recommend that our listeners kind of look for or listen to as they're hearing this piece.
First of all, this entire program that you all have set up is really magnificent. I mean, we could spend an hour on just this one piece, right? It is very straightforward. And what I love about this piece and also this entire program is there was something there for everyone, from the very surface all the way down to the bottom, to the substratum of it. And that's important. Invocation, take it for what it is. Also read invitation. And it really is a wonderful way to start off this entire Virtual Sacred Masterworks series, because we have been invited to live differently after this pandemic or during this pandemic. And that invitation is a standing one, to take or to leave. And what Rollo Dilworth does with this piece is, it reminds me very much of growing up going to church in the late 80s and 90s. Think Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith, right? It's like, is Christian music going to go pop? Maybe, I don't know. But that's an right, a little bit. That's an accessible point for everyone in our communities and people. And it is an invitation for folks to commune with whoever they think their creator is, but also understanding that communion happens within us. And also, as you know, the power of communal singing, that invitation is there for everyone as well. So this is not a hard think piece, but it is a very piece where you open your ears, you almost close your eyes, and you just invite whatever it is into your spirit. And it's a wonderful way to let folks know that whatever is on this program for this series is for them, it's about them, and they can wrap their ears and their hearts and their eyes around it and really, really enjoy it. It feels so familiar, and it's like church, but you ain't got to go to church for it. It's awesome. It's a good one.
Well, that's a really great way to put it, and it leads me back a little bit to one of the comments that you made about the piano piece, the William Grant Still that you mentioned, and that is, whether we're given a direct and kind of instructive title like Invocation, or whether we don't have that, there's a part of music it is a prayer, right? It is in some way a form of worship, and that's really divorced from kind of dogma and tradition of a particular flavor or brand, but the connection that we feel deep inside.
Yeah, and you're right, and especially when we've all been very much starved for it, for that human interaction, that 3D experience. Once again, it sets the tone for your program famously. I wouldn't order it any differently. I would open this and other programs with this one again, because it levels the playing field. Everyone's human. We are just here to, like I said, to commune with ourselves, with each other. And that's very personal, but can also be a very community-based experience. And bravo for starting this one off, for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think our audiences will enjoy hearing it. The singers that we had in the recording for that piece really did a wonderful job, and that gives me a moment. Josh is he's not leaving us, but he's going to magically kind of recede in the digital ether, and we're going to have another guest join us for just a moment. But Josh will be right back. I have a confession to make, because you don't know this yet, but I did not conduct Invocation in the performance that you will see on June the 3rd. I was just merely an innocent bystander enjoying the beautiful singing. The conductor for that piece was none other than the conducting fellow for the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir, a young man named Alejandro Reyna. And I've asked Alejandro if he would join us on screen tonight. So let's give a warm YouTube welcome to conducting fellow for the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir, Alejandro Reyna. Welcome, Alejandro. How are you tonight?
I'm well, Dr. Stark. How are you?
I'm just great. And thank you for spending some time with us this evening. As I mentioned, we asked you to do the honors of conducting this first piece on the concert. And so I wondered if you might tell us if there was, as you were preparing for the performance, for the recording process, if there was anything in particular in the piece that you wanted to bring out, a mood, a feeling, a color, an inflection. What was guiding you as you were thinking about how to present this piece of music?
Yep. Well, Joshua put it so beautifully, of kind of the purpose of the piece, and it is an invitation. And like many of Dilworth's pieces, much of the challenging part is the energy the choir needs to bring, and each singer needs to bring to it. And this piece is no exception. So I wanted to make sure that the members were intentional with that energy, and that it was present all throughout, and that we weren't wavering away from it. And so again, this piece isn't technically demanding, but I don't think that's the point. It's an invitation, it's an opening, a prayer calling for that love and that mercy. And I think the choir realized that so effortlessly. So we just wanted to make sure that energy was there to start off this beautiful program for the rest of the night.
So from a conductor's perspective then, if you're conducting a piece of music that is not super challenging from a technical standpoint, as you mentioned, what are the things you're thinking about as a conductor that you want to guide the singers, guide the performance? Where are you putting your energies, and how are you trying to connect with the singers?
Yep, more than ever because we were wearing our masks, the eye contact and that one-on-one, you can't show anything with our mouths. And so everything is in the eye contact and making sure that you make that with each member and throughout the performance that everyone's keeping that energy and that you feel it as well.
And remind our viewers, if you would, Alejandro, you were conducting not the full symphonic choir, but a small group of singers. Do you remember how many there were singing this piece?
We had 11. I'm pretty sure 11 ensemble members. Yes.
Yeah, so it was quite a different experience than it would be in normal times. But maybe that was a good thing because there was a much better opportunity perhaps to make the eye contact with everybody than there would be if you had 100 or more. So one other question, I think our viewers might be interested in knowing a little bit more about your role in the symphonic choir and about your own work as a musician and your studies. And so I'll just mention that Alejandro is, as I said, he's the conducting fellow for the symphonic choir. And this is a unique joint position that is supported both by the ISC and by Butler University, where Alejandro is pursuing his master's degree in choral conducting and also in vocal performance. This is a program that's unique in the nation, providing mentoring and direct experience opportunities for emerging conductors, the next generation of symphonic choir conductors, we like to say. So Alejandro, not to put you on the spot too much, but I wonder if you could just share with us, what has it been like working with the ISC as a graduate student so far, knowing that this has been an extraordinary first year for you because of the pandemic, but you've had a chance to meet folks and attend lots of rehearsals, both virtual and in person. I wonder, is there a way you can sum any of that up for us?
Yeah, I think two-part. Meeting the first time we started having rehearsals, even for this concert, it was really reminding me why I do this and like why I want to continue in choral conducting. Is it means so much for so many people, and showing up to rehearsals and just being there with the other community members. It means so much for them to be able to sing together and create this art and share it. And then also the under the leadership of you and Liam Bonner and everyone else on the staff and the board, of learning of how professional performing arts organization adapts and is able to create this virtual Sacred Master concert at the same or level of quality as a live concert in any other year. So there's been a lot of learning, and I'm very thankful for that. And I'm sure next year there'll be even more to learn.
Well, and we thank you, Alejandro, for the important role that you've played. Yes, there has been a lot of learning, and we're learning just as much as you are, I think. So thank you very much for the leadership and the guidance and the energy you provide. And thank you for spending some time with us tonight on this Inquiring Minds. Thank you. Alejandro Reyna, ladies and gentlemen, conducting fellow for the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir. And now we'll pivot back to our friend, Joshua Thompson. Joshua will be rejoining us here on screen. And there he is. And we're going to talk about the next work that we'd like to feature in our conversation today. This is a motet, a setting of the familiar Ave Maria text sung in Latin by a composer that I'm just getting to know myself in the last 12 months. And I'm a little embarrassed to admit that because there's so many beautiful works by R. Nathaniel Dett. Joshua, I do know that Dett came to the United States from Canada, but I wonder if what are the other things that you might want to mention to our viewers and listeners that they might find of interest about his life and his work?
Yeah, Robert Nathaniel Dett's one of my favorite composers, mainly because he allows me to really do this like nerdy geeky thing where I take sociology and history and match it up with music to kind of tell this comprehensive story. He's born in Canada in 1882, and it's really important where he is born because this is very quickly after the Civil War. We're in the Reconstruction era. And so if you were to follow the Underground Railroad, it goes up to Canada. it's super important that he is born there because he's going to have access and a little bit more freedom spatially in this Western hemisphere than anyone else in the contiguous United States is going to, right? Because the United States is still very, very much segregated and still having this pitched battle over states' rights and if slavery is a moral or immoral institution. And so for that reason, born there, but moves to New York, I think by the time he's 9. And because of that, he has a little bit more liberty and access to education. He's the first Black person to obtain a piano degree from Oberlin's Conservatory of Music in Ohio, which again, very important. But more broadly, Det represents one of the very first Great Migration composers. If we think about the Great Migration, where you have an entire culture of newly freed slaves or enslaved people, newly freed people, migrating from the South and spreading throughout the entire United States. That process goes from the end of the Civil War, and we kind of end that marker by the late 1960s and 70s. So there's tons of them, and he is one of the first to do this. So his geography and place and time and when he was born really sets this trajectory for him to be a very leading composer. And in a certain type of way, whether it's his intent or not, I don't want to call it a civil rights leader, but he is a prominent person that is really showing the entire world and maybe his own culture as well that there is excellence, there is agency and ability across all peoples, including Black folks. And so for more, I will shamelessly plug again, Melanated Moments and Classical Music. Angela and I just wrapped up season 2, and episode 8 of season 2 is dedicated to Robert Nathaniel Det, particularly with his In the Bottoms piano suite, which I love. What he does with the Ave Maria is take a piece of literature and music that is a standard, and he repackages it and shows off his ability to compose, his understanding of point and counterpoint, some of those musically technical things. If you take nothing else away other than this man produced beautiful music and knew what he was doing and did it very well. That's all you need to know. It really is. So brilliant man. His catalog is absolutely huge. Go down that rabbit hole as far as you want to. You won't be sorry. If you are, come find me. We'll talk about it.
I want to remind our viewers that if you have a question or a comment about anything you're hearing tonight, go ahead and put it in the chat window on your viewer there, and that'll be passed along to us, and we'll try to work them into the conversation. Joshua, as I was looking at this beautiful setting of the familiar Ave Maria text, I couldn't help but think about some other composers who've set similar kinds of liturgical works for the Catholic Church. And in fact, some of them have set that very text as well, as we well know, Bruckner, Brahms, and even Verdi. And I was just wondering if you can draw any connection between influences that Det may have experienced from any of those European styles as a composer living in the North American continent and the United States.
Absolutely. I mean, that influence is inescapable. Again, he's studying in Oberlin. And if we think about what course curriculum is like for, honestly, K through graduate schools, standard rep is standard rep. And it looks very monochromatic. So it's impossible for him to be under any other influence other than that, or he's learning a lot of that. He's also right in that romantic era time. So he's going to have some of those snatches and those cadences and phrases that are indicative of those composers. What I find more remarkable is he's influencing those folks. Contemporary of a Harry Burleigh. He's a contemporary of Anton Dvorak, who really zeroed in on taking the folk tunes of distinct cultures and weaving them into this tapestry of music with the classical tradition. And so I think that influence, that admiration is definitely going both ways. I give Det a little bit more credit because he's like this musical canary in the coal mine, like I like to say. He exists in a culture that represents this emerging African-American culture, this broader culture that is not necessarily steeped in classical or choral music in the traditional sense. It's steeped in folk. This is at the time where Scott Joplin, Artie Matthews, later on Jelly Roll Morton, ragtime and jazz is coming into its own. And Det was very smart, along with Harry Burleigh and several other Black composers, about taking pieces of their organic culture and putting it into the musical context, set and setting in which they were in, sometimes calling blatant attention to it, but other times just showing how the melange and the mixing and matching of genres, cultures, and musical identities and ideologies always run up against each other. And that's true today. You know, how we call it is how we call it. The same thing is happening today. Let's go back to Rollo Dilworth. He's doing the same thing, taking a very traditional gospel art song and updating it for the 20th and 21st century. So nothing new under the sun. We just borrow off of each other and kind of update what we consider sacred and how we compose and perform music. So yeah.
I feel like I've just heard the whole kind of summary of choral music in the last couple of paragraphs. Joshua, it's so wonderful to have you here to help us kind of learn more about the connections between these composers and the influences that they exert upon one another, because nobody makes music in a vacuum, right? It's all part of the community. And I want to point out to our viewers that you've also written program notes for this concert that will be available online in Spanish and in English, and that those will be available online with the release of the virtual Sacred Masterworks performance. And so I mention that because you've mentioned so many fascinating names and kind of rabbit hole invitations that I want to go down and follow those threads. And I imagine our viewers and listeners will feel the same way. So thank you for that in advance. And I also want to mention for the viewers that I'm getting the message from our chat moderator that Joshua has a bunch of fans from Melanated Moments podcast in the chat letting us know of their ovation and their appreciation. So your fan club is strong.
Hey, my fan club built me, so I owe it all to them. Thank you. Keep listening. Season 3 is coming out very soon, I think at the end of the summer, but it's a fun project. And some of these names were new to me. Expert is kind of a hilarious word to me because I'm more of an inquiry than anything else. I'm your resident music nerd for the evening, and I enjoy the role very much so.
One of the things that we often like to do when we present Inquiring Minds events is let our listeners hear little snippets of music. And we don't have a choir with us, but we do have the next best thing, which is the keyboard artist for the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir, which is David Duncan. David has recorded the opening few measures of the piano reduction of the Ave Maria that we've been talking about. And we thought it might be interesting and helpful for people to get to listen to just a little bit of that. So Master Control is going to switch over to a video recording that David made of the piano reduction of the beginning of Robert Nathaniel Dett's Ave Maria. You were just listening to a little excerpt of the Ave Maria piano reduction played by Indianapolis Symphonic Choir keyboard artist David Duncan. Okay, before we move on to the next piece we'd like to discuss, I thought it might be interesting for us to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the unique challenges to singing presented by the pandemic. We know that There are all kinds of protocols that are coming to us from the Centers for Disease Control and other things. And a lot of them have to do with the very processes that are essential to singing, the breath and respiration and exhalation. And so I have invited one of our wonderful singers from the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir to be with us tonight to talk just a little bit about her experience and let you know what it was like and how different it felt to put this together. So joining me now on screen is Dr. Quay Kester. Quay is a member of the soprano section of the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir and a dear friend to all of us. Quay, it's wonderful to have you with us for our conversation tonight.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Much appreciated. And I'm learning so much. And I'm really looking forward to this June 3rd because we haven't heard this yet either. So it's exciting. So from a singer's perspective, imagine a weekly community, literally shoulder to shoulder, 100 or more, literally breathing together for hours each week. We get to know each other, we get to anticipate each other, sometimes to the point of recognizing what somebody had for dinner earlier. We get some close-up singing and breathing together. So this experience of going virtual and having that culminate in this sacred space of the Sacred Masterworks, it involved a lot of changes. It involved a lot of making sure that people were safe. For example, when we came in, we got our temperatures taken. We made sure that we were 6 feet apart from one another. We had to wear masks.
Even while you were singing?
Even while we were singing. Okay, so now this is, and they're very glamorous too, as you can tell. And so you can see by the picture too, very, very glamorous. And so we were in rehearsal for 30 minutes, had to take a 15-minute break. And so just to let the room air out as well. And so part of the reason I'm wearing this mask is to let you know that we also had to develop our breathing skills, because one of the things with this mask, it's very safe, it's very thick, it's very long. We didn't choke ourselves breathing in another mask. But on the other hand, in order to get our sound out, we really had to develop, not just our ears, we had to develop, oh, thank goodness, we had to develop our rib cage, our diaphragm, all those things, all those mechanics of singing. So along with the theme of adapting and learning tonight, many, many lessons that we didn't really necessarily anticipate. And so the masks were one, we got creative with grills inside and so on. I tried to convince Eric to have bling and sequins. No, he wasn't going for that. And so that's okay though. And so one of the surprises that we learned as singers is with the masks, the sound goes this way. So we could hear ourselves all together too well. And that was very humbling from time to time. The other thing that we learned was, because we're 6 feet apart in this massive room that sucks sound as well, guess who we could not hear? We couldn't hear each other. We're used to hearing each other. We're used to feeding off of each other, adjusting to each other, and having each other's backs and fronts and sides and all of that to make this communal sound. We could not hear each other except for ourselves and our own ears. So guess what we had to do? We had to watch that conductor. What? We had to watch that conductor. And we had to trust him that we were making beautiful sound. And so I must admit, sometimes I cheated and I had a little tape recorder in there watching him so I could rehearse later. The rehearsals were interesting because we were independently rehearsing. We had to up our musicianship like crazy. And so we were independently rehearsing. Some of us had done virtual recordings before, also humbling experience. So I relied on a lot of that to get to everything fine-honed. And so we also had to be and another theme of tonight is adapting. So we really had to adapt how quickly we and how agile we were in adjusting, because we had our wood floors at home, we had the shower, We had the porch, the screened in porch. We had the Basile Opera Center. We had a recording studio with very sensitive mics that very few of us, if any, had experienced before. We had the lovely Indiana Landmark Center. All of those have different acoustics. So we're always having to adjust and grow, and just grow like crazy. How to get our music going without making sounds and so on. So lots of physical transitions and lots of learning that way as well.
That's a wonderful description of kind of the physical characteristics and the nuts and bolts pieces of it. What did it feel like to be making all those changes?
Yeah, sometimes it was fun, sometimes it wasn't. And so, so when we think about the emotionality of it, the emotionality started back in March. Just as this choir was about to take their collective first breath.
March of 2020.
March of 2020, thank you, yes. So just as this choir was getting ready to take that collective breath for the first note of Elijah, COVID took our breath away. It just took our breath away. And I'm getting emotional about this. And so it's a sacred space, this community of choir members, and we take care of each other, and we're side by side. It's made up of all these incredibly diverse people, all walks of life, and we're there for each other. And then we couldn't be. And so what was that like? And various people had various emotional reactions to it. And just because, as we talked about before, that whole notion of we're starved for human interaction. We discovered that about each other. Not that we didn't know that we didn't appreciate each other, because we do. And so one of the things that staff did was also grow. And we challenged them to grow. They challenged us to grow. And so we had weekly Zoom meetings to help us stay connected. That was the purpose of the Zoom meetings. Sometimes we had meetings, but most of it was just to help us stay connected. People could express what they were feeling. They could join in if they wanted to. They didn't have to do that, but we had those opportunities to stay connected. And then in terms of musicianship, that emotional feeling of, oh my gosh, and especially with the Sacred Masterworks, 10 people, wow. And some of us, many of us, were singing, we were the only ones singing that particular part. So for me, that sense of, I'm auditioning all the time, and that's terrifying, because I wanted to do this perfectly. I wanted to do this well, and I'm sure that others are feeling the same way. And this incredible intensity of responsibility to one another, to make sure that this group of 10 or 11 people, we did our best. We cared for each other. We were patient with each other. If we needed to work harder or a little bit more on something, we did. And there was no impatience with it. It was all about just bringing good music for ourselves so that we could bring good music, healing music, to the company or to the community. And one of the things when we were recording, it was kind of cool to talk about adapting and emotionality. When we were recording, it was strictly scheduled. We were careful going in and out. And at that time, people had been vaccinated by now. And so what Matthew learned and what everybody
Matthew
adjusted
Creek,
for.
the production and communications manager for the symphonic.
Yes, thank you. And he was also our nurse. He was the one who took our temperature. Other duties as not even assigned, but other duties.
Yes.
So when we were coming in and out of that recording session, whether it was at the Landmarks or whether it was at the Lodge, people hugged each other. Mm-hmm. We were masked up. We were vaccinated enough that, and the studio allowed the time for that. We needed that. Mm-hmm. And we took time. I mean, we just hijacked it. We took time because we needed it. We didn't know we were going to do it.
Yep. But
we took time to hug. And that was so, so important.
That comment connects with a comment that has been passed through the chat and leads me to my final question, and we have just a few seconds remaining in this segment. But one of our choir members put in the chat that our Zoom meetings pretty much saved me on many days.
Yes.
And so I just wonder, there have to be some silver linings in this, and I think those kind of unanticipated moments of contact, of safe hugging after over a year of separation. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm so proud of this choir, the staff, everyone, because we adapted, we learned, we're still learning, we're still adapting, and we realize the importance, the essential nature of music together, of community, of music as healing energy, caring for ourselves, having fun, and for that. In this exposure to these pieces and sacred masterworks also just built in that notion of we can be creative. We can when we need to. And even when we don't, this forced us to be creative or not, but we chose to be creative. We chose to be innovative. We chose to try new things, and we will still do that. We're learning more and more all the time. And so in doing that, we also learn to trust ourselves more. And so that we can continue to learn together and breathe together so the community can also breathe.
Oh, so beautifully put, Quay. I have goosebumps myself as I'm hearing you speak. You so eloquently capture, I think, what the experience is for those of us who adore this music and adore the people that allow it to be possible. And you're one of those whom we adore. And so we thank you very much for spending some time with us this evening. And I can't wait for all our families and friends to see you and the others in our groups when the program comes out on June 3rd. So thank you for taking a little time to be with us tonight, Quay.
Thanks for making me cry in public.
Well, right back at you.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, and okay, so we're going to turn our attention now back to some of the repertoire and invite our friend Joshua Thompson to come back on screen. Hi, Joshua. And I want to share with you another chat gem that has been passed to me. Somebody has said, praises to Joshua for being an absolute natural teacher. So congratulations, and yes, sir, that is true. I'm really excited to talk about this next piece, 5 Vignettes by David Baker, because it presents us an opportunity to talk about something with really bona fide, solid Hoosier roots. So tell us, what do we need to know about this work by David Baker?
There's so much to talk about, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit and get my notes out, right?
Good.
First of all, this gentleman is an icon internationally, and Indianapolis, IU, Jacob School of Music, we get to claim him, very endearingly. And I would say drive no further than Musicians Repair on Capitol heading towards downtown. And he is on that mural of jazz greats that is on that back wall, an iconic landmark that many of us drive past every day, and we have no idea who's up there. We don't even know it's there at all. So there's that. I think what's really important is because he has accomplishments that are just endless almost. I'll rattle off a few of them. He was the Jacob School of Music Jazz Program, period. He absolutely was for decades on end. That's why people went, and you went, so you could say, I studied under, Dr. David Baker. Just a luminary in composition, in what he was able to do for his community, and still doing it as well. What comes to mind is, this gentleman has over, 65 recordings, 70 books, a litany of publications, and he is, he was named the Living Jazz Legend in 2007 for the JFK Kennedy Center, which is huge, but also here locally, bringing it home how we elevate and celebrate our own local luminaries. He received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Indiana Historical Society. So a catalog that's definitely worth looking into. And a lot of times we do kind of pigeonhole him to jazz, rightly so when we should. Composition is composition. And if you're writing for a jazz band, you are absolutely writing for an orchestra. You are absolutely writing for a choir, for solo works, and you can do both. What you all are doing on this program, and I'm so excited about with this piece, is picking up on a relationship very much like one between Langston Hughes and Margaret Bonds of the Harlem Renaissance, the famed writer who called Indianapolis home for a long time. David Baker and Maury Evans worked together a whole lot in that age-old tradition of art songs, of the power of adding text and narrative and poetry to music. And they did several tunes together. I do the A Good Assassination Should Be Quiet. That was one that they did together. It was about 10 years removed from the assassination of Dr. King. And the wonderful thing about Maury Evans is she was unbelievably direct. She cut to the quick all the time, whether she was talking about politics or even just her own state of being or the state of being. And there's no better composer to write music to that than David Baker. They do not get in each other's way at all. They elevate and complement each other so much and very well. And what I love about this piece as an instrumentalist, my brain automatically goes to that. And David Baker weaves together so many musical textures and styles and sonorities that are gorgeous. And he has to, because what Maury Evans did in the text is very simple, but it is very, very powerful, powerful verbiage that is not overly flowery because it doesn't need to be. And that combination for the two of them, much like their predecessors, remains unmatched as far as I'm concerned. I'm still digging through their catalog. A, between what I can play, that's a limited amount. But B, there's just so much, and it's figuring out, how do we program this? What do we do with it? And I applaud you all for just doing it. I think that is the important part when folks are trying to figure out, how do we, elevate? Just do it. That's the easy part. So bravo for doing that.
Well, it was a joy to prepare it and sing it. You mentioned the text of Maury Evans, the poet whose words David Baker set in this piece. So let's take a moment and just hear them. It's a short poem that the listeners will hear the choir sing. And here are the words. Let me tell you how to meet the day. Life to be explored, love, an ambience, a climate, a self to be identified, a self clarified. Outlined, free form, so there is room to breathe. Ordered, so the growth is upward. This is how we stand before the sunrise, arms outstretched. And when we hear that combined, as you say, with David Baker's skillful setting, choir plus flute, guitar, drum, stand-up bass, and piano. Not a lot of instruments, but lots of colors that come from those. Joshua, we know that Indiana has a lengthy history in jazz music. Do you find any connections between this piece and that history, that heritage of the jazz greats that used to pass through our city?
Absolutely. I mean, David Baker is that jazz great, right? Along with, Freddie Hubbard and J.J. Johnson. Obviously, the other one that everyone really knows is Wes Montgomery. Listening to the instrumental part of this song, it becomes wildly clear, right? There's that middle part where he really breaks it down. He gives you a little bit of that syncopation and that easy rhythm, right? And it's just fun. It's like iconically David Baker, and it's fantastic. And even broader than that, not just for the jazz community, but for our community as well. And for this program, Maury Evans gives us another reiteration of that invocation, of that invitation, right? Like we wake up every day to grow, arms upstretched upwards, because that's where the sun is. I mean, these are absolutely poignant and powerful messages that applies directly to our city, to ourselves. But again, in this whole concept of communal singing and how does your garden grow type of deal and imagery that we can always spin out. It is wildly overwhelming sometimes to take it all in, and it becomes mantras and manifestations, I think, or it should. And Maury Evans was brilliant at doing that. She could give you that political punch and that social righteous indignation, but it was rooted and it came from this, where this is the ideal and where we should be. And that's what paves the way for equity, diversity, inclusion, or whatever buzzwords they are. It's nothing to be overthought about. It's just do it. Wake up every day with pure heart, intention, and sincerity. And the world is a much better place, right?
Amen. We've asked David Duncan, our keyboard artist, to help us share a little bit of the flavor of David Baker's work, 5 Vignettes, with us. So we will have a short recording of David playing the piano introduction, and you'll hear the lilting rhythms and jazz harmonies that Baker utilizes at the beginning of this work that will be coming up on June the 3rd. And we can't wait to share the rest of that movement with you all starting on June 3rd, which is when the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir's virtual Sacred Masterworks performance will be released and available for public viewing for the following 3 months. And Joshua, that brings us to the final piece that we're going to talk about tonight. And I'd like to just set the stage a little bit for our listeners and viewers. So far, all of the pieces that we've discussed and about 8 others have been performed by small groups of 8 or 10 or sometimes 11 singers and a piano or the instrumental combo, as we saw with David Baker, or simply a cappella. But there is one outlier in the program that the audience can be looking forward to. One of our favorite pieces in the symphonic choir is the German Requiem by Johannes Brahms, Ein Deutsches Requiem by Brahms. It's a piece that we never tire of singing and has become, in a way, a bit of a signature piece for the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir. And because of its massive popularity, but also because we wanted to find a way to draw together perhaps some of our former singers who've moved outside of the state of Indiana and not able to be together for rehearsals, we decided we would sing the middle movement, the 4th movement of the Brahms Requiem, How Lovely Are Thy Dwelling Places, and record it as a virtual choir. So instead of 8 or 10 people gathering together and recording it, what happened is 100 people sat in their living room or on their deck or in their basement, I don't know where they did this, and recorded themselves singing their part to the pre-recorded piano accompaniment track. And that was then all blended together, video and audio, and will be released. So you'll actually hear almost 100 singers from the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir when you're listening to that piece. We're starting to run a little low on our time, Josh. So I wonder if you can tell us the 2 or 3 things about the Brahms Requiem and this movement in particular that stand out the most, that make it just so incredibly popular.
Yeah, well, I mean, Brahms kind of did the work for himself. Brahms is part of the big 3 Bs between Bach and Beethoven and Brahms, right? He's in there. So I think he's already made the cut. So that means that's him being very concise, very traditional and classical on the nose. However, he kind of twists it just a little bit, because rather than taking the liturgy with that very biblical or that spiritual text, he really places it outside of religiosity on the nose, if that makes sense, which I think is really smart and oftentimes overlooked, particularly with this requiem, right? Because he's using the form as a function and a way to compose in the style of, borrowing from the frame and the form of it without necessarily ascribing so directly to the religious nature of it. And I just think that's a smart way to reframe Brahms, right? When we have this influx of newer composers and underrepresented composers on programs, what they should be, Brahms gets to stay, and I think all the other ones should too, because their works are reframed and repackaged, and we have this broader, more comprehensive, and therefore more accurate and artistic representation of what makes a work sacred by culture, by form, by composition. and the whole Requiem really lends itself very well to that, as do a couple of the other ones that you have on the program. I mean, your whole lineup is it's a monster program. There's a lot of stuff on here, but they all complement each other very, very well. And that common thread of communal experiences and whatever type of communication we have as individuals with nature, with each other, you know, and here, there, and everywhere else. It's a wonderful way. You bookend this program very well between the Dilworth and the Brahms. You give us something new so we can appreciate it when it comes to something that's traditional that we've heard before. We get to hear it differently. And I know for me, I care a little bit more about Brahms now. I'm like, oh, okay. I can hear it again for the first time and find something new. And that's our job, I think. And you all are doing a wonderful job at it. And so, yeah, it's just a magnificent program from start to finish. So yeah.
Oh, Joshua, thank you so much. It has meant so much to me and to us to have your expertise be a part of this project, not just tonight, but in the planning of tonight and developing the program notes and thinking through the selection of the composers. We're just so grateful to you for your expertise and your energy and your wisdom and your vision. And we hope that we can continue to partner together on projects like this as we move together and maybe even in the same room together at the same time and not have to be online. We're going to keep Josh with us on screen for just a couple more minutes. We're running down to the end of our planned time together, but I want to remind folks who are watching, if they have any questions, to go ahead and plop them in the chat and we'll be happy to get to them. And while you're doing that, I'll just remind everybody that the music we've been talking about tonight is music that has been already recorded by members of the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir as part of our virtual Sacred Masterworks for the 2020-2021 concert series. And this music will be available for public enjoyment beginning a week from Thursday, June the 3rd. And it will be available streaming. And once you have your ticket, you can enjoy the program as many times as you've just put it on constant repeat for the next 90 days and you'll be singing along with us in no time. Remember to access that, go to the choir's website, indychoir.org, and look for the Sacred Masterworks icon, click there, and it'll walk you through the process. We also have we are charging a modest fee for access to the program. However, because we know that a number of people in the arts community, performers and fans alike, have been financially impacted, there is a place, if you have been financially impacted by COVID, we don't want you not to be able to enjoy this music. So you can check that box and you'll be able to receive your access code free of charge. So go to the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir website, indychoir.org, and you can see all you need to see about accessing the program there. Also, I'd like to remind everybody or mention to everybody that after over 1.5 years of no auditions, we are going to be holding auditions for new singers for the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir coming up in September. September the 18th is the audition date. If any of you are interested in auditioning to join us for the coming concert season, we invite you to go again to the choir's website, indychoir.org, and find the audition tab where you can get more information. Josh, I think Joshua, you've done such a great job of sharing so much information that we have uprooted all of the questioners and left them silent in amazement. But I just wonder, is there anything that comes to mind as you think about how we can enjoy this music, not just as we're watching it and kind of experience as an audience member, but how we can take any of the messages of this music forward with us beyond that initial performance?
For this performance, and I would say for any performance you were in, theater or singing or playing, audience alike, as we're able to go back out, we're eager, and so we get the challenge of moving beyond passive listening. Experience all of these things, absolutely, but go committed to take something away, right? So that would mean silence your phone, put it away, and just be present, right? Sometimes we miss so many messages because we're just a little bit distracted. And since this is something that we have been missing so much, What a missed opportunity if out the gate we went back to how we, intentionally and unintentionally take things for granted. So no more passive listening, be an active listener. And these experiences really are for you. And so it's whatever you want to get out of it. And that's something I'm reminding myself of all of the time. And I think it bears repeating numerous times.
Well, that's a great point. We have a chance here to kind of reset the formula a little bit and be a little bit more mindful about all the things that we take on and do in a day. So thank you for that reminder.
Absolutely.
I want to thank, as we get ready to close our program this evening, I want to thank a lot of people. I'm going to start with the singers of the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir. You folks have made it possible for us not only just to survive this pandemic year, but really to thrive in ways that we had no idea were possible. Your energy, your commitment, your dedication, and your support have done that. And when we get back together, it's going to be a grand celebration, and I can't wait. I also would like to thank all of the staff of the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir, Executive Director Liam Bonner, Development Director Kelly Kearse, Production and Communications Director Matthew Creek, conducting fellow whom you met earlier, Alejandro Reyna, keyboard artist David Duncan, and Associate Artistic Director Dr. Michael Davis, for their support, their vision, their guidance in putting these programs together. We are led by a wonderful board of directors. I would like to thank them as well, and also our donors, our supporters, and fans. And I should also mention that when you enjoy the program starting on June the 3rd, have you got it memorized yet? I think I've only mentioned it like 100 times tonight. You will be enjoying the editorial and audio talents of the professionals at the Lodge Studios, Mike Graham, our good friend there, and Absorbed Media Productions led by Owen Thomas, who are putting the video pieces together. We're especially thankful to them. But most of all, we want to thank, on behalf of the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir, our special guest presenter tonight, and our scholar and our music sociologist and good friend, Mr. Joshua Thompson. Joshua, thank you again for being with us tonight.
My honor and my pleasure. Let's do it again soon.
You bet. Let's do it. Friends, thank you for spending a little bit of your evening with us tonight. We look forward to seeing you on the release of our program, Virtual Sacred Masterworks, on June 3rd and in the coming concert season. My very best wishes to each of you. Good night.